You believe that explaining yourself is an act of honesty. You were taught that by giving reasons, by detailing your motives, and by trying to make the other person understand your side, you are building a bridge. You were lied to. In the brutal architecture of human interactions, every word you use to justify yourself is a brick you remove from your own fortress to try to plug a hole in someone else's perception. Understand one thing now before it's too late. Whoever explains themselves submits themselves. The moment you feel the compulsive need to clarify your intentions, you have just surrendered the crown. You have ceased to be the axis of your own world and have become a defendant in the court of mediocre minds. The average person lives in a state of perpetual apologies. They ask permission to exist, beg forgiveness for their decisions, and plead for validation through logical arguments that no one deep down wants to hear. The truth is uncomfortable and cold. The need for explanation stems from a lack of authority. If your actions don't speak for themselves, no long articulate sentence can save them. On the contrary, the more you talk, the more you reveal how much the opinions of others disturb you. You're bleeding in front of social sharks and wondering why respect for you is dying. Every it's not quite like that. Every paragraph justifying your lateness, your mistake, or your life choice is a silent cry that says, please don't condemn me. I need you to agree with me so I can sleep in peace. This is status suicide. It's a slow erosion of your mental sovereignty. But what I'm about to reveal to you isn't just about social etiquette or deliberate rudeness. It's about the occult science of dominance and mystery. There's a dark psychological reason why silence crushes the arrogance of others, while explanation fuels contempt. But that's just the surface. If you think the problem is simply talking too much, you haven't yet seen the abyss that lies beneath your need to be understood. The need to explain oneself is not a matter of etiquette. It's a pathology of the ego. To understand why you feel this almost physical urge to justify your choices, you need to look into the distorted mirror of human nature. The average person believes that the truth will set them free. But in the game of power and perception, truth is merely the raw material that others use to carve out their own weakness. When you explain yourself, you are implicitly acknowledging that the other person is the judge and you are the defendant. You are handing them the gavel of judgment. Schopenhauer already warned us about human vanity. The desire to be validated by another's mind is the most secure prison that exists. By opening your mouth to clarify, you are admitting that your reality is not self-sufficient. You need the other person's lens to focus on you in the correct way so that you feel real. This is emotional begging disguised as dialogue. The sovereign dwells within their own center. Their actions are accomplished facts, granite monuments that don't ask permission to occupy space. The reactive one, the man with a slave spirit, acts as if his decisions were merely suggestions awaiting the group's approval. If you choose a path and feel the need to explain why to those left behind, you are still chained to them. You haven't truly left. You've only stretched the rope of your dependence. The psychology of power is clear. Mystery breeds respect, while excessive transparency breeds disdain. What is fully understood ceases to be feared or admired. By becoming an open book, you become predictable. And what is predictable is manipulable. Explanation drains your vital energy and transfers it to those who listen to you, because now they possess the information necessary to judge you, label you, and eventually discard you. You believe you are being transparent, but you are only becoming invisible. True strength is opaque. It is a wall of ice that offers no cracks for outside curiosity. The man who never explains himself creates an information vacuum that others try to fill with projections of power, fear, and reverence. He's not a problem to be solved. He is a presence to be respected. But there's an even deeper layer. To master this art, you need to understand the biological and social mechanisms that push you into this trap every time you feel pressured. Why does your throat tighten and the words leap out before you can contain them? Why does the silence after a probing question feel like acid burning your skin? There is an invisible gear grinding away at your sovereignty, and it is fueled by a primal survival instinct, the fear of exclusion. The mechanics are perverse. When you are questioned or confronted, your brain interprets the judgment of others as a threat to your status in the group. The explanation then emerges as a submissive defense strategy. It's the psychological equivalent of an animal exposing its throat to avoid a predator's attack. You're not trying to clarify the truth, as you're trying to signal, I'm not dangerous, I follow your rules, please continue accepting me. But here's the secret that the architects of human behavior hide. The moment you give in to that impulse, you activate a dominance trigger in the other person. The other person's ego is an insatiable monster. The more justifications you offer, the more authority you confer on the listener. You create an imbalance of emotional voltage where you are the negative, drained pole, and the other person is the positive pole, charged by your effort to please. Machiavelli understood this dynamic perfectly. Perception is the only reality that matters. If you explain yourself, you admit that your action was ambiguous, wrong, or open to revision. You destroy the aura of inevitability that every strong man must emanate. Explanation is the noise that destroys the music of power. It reveals the seams of your confidence, shows where you fear being discovered, and points out exactly where your insecurity hurts. The game is purely energetic. The one who remains silent forces the other to expend energy trying to decipher them. The one who explains themselves expends energy trying to save themselves. It's a slow exhaustion that leaves you vulnerable, predictable, and above all ordinary. You become just another piece on the board, moved by the hand of the one who knew how to stay quiet while you got lost in arguments. But the real problem hasn't surfaced yet. To understand how this weakness became your identity, we need to look in the mirror of the mediocre man, the pattern you've been repeating without realizing it. Observe the average man in his habitat of mediocrity. He is a bundle of exposed nerves, a creature that reacts to every external stimulus like a caged animal. When someone questions him, he doesn't just answer, he disintegrates into 1,000 justifications. He offers context that no one asked for, motives that no one values, and excuses that only serve to confirm his own guilt. This is the pattern of the reactive man. He lives for the audience. The most humiliating mistake he makes is believing that by explaining himself, he is in control of the narrative. On the contrary, he is a slave to the perception of others. Notice how he gestures, how he raises his voice to convince, how he anxiously seeks eye contact to see if the other person understood. He is selling his own soul for a nod. The psychology of the weak is based on forced transparency. They fear silence because silence is the space where judgment matures, so they fill that space with noise. They confess their fears, explain why they failed, detail why they made that unpopular decision. They believe that clarity generates connection, but in the real world, absolute clarity breeds contempt. What is fully exposed loses its value. What is mapped out ceases to be territory to be conquered and becomes merely beaten ground. By reacting in this habitual way, you become predictable. If I know that a question from me will make you unleash 30 minutes of justifications, I am your master. I can drain your energy whenever I want. I can put you on the defensive with a single raised eyebrow. You weaken with each sentence because you are giving the world a map of your insecurity. You are shouting, "Look how much I care about what you think." The average man is a pocketbook, cheap and easy to read. The rare man is a coded manuscript. And this is where almost everyone falls apart. They prefer the comfort of being understood to the glory of being respected. They prefer the lukewarm acceptance of the group to the cold fear that authority imposes. Now pay attention, because the next point changes everything. We will leave the realm of weakness and enter the territory of execution. This is where the game changes and the blood of the weak cools to give way to the ice of the strategist. The first change in posture is not verbal, it's a biochemical rupture. When you are questioned, when the world demands a justification for your existence or your actions, your first reaction should be emptiness. The mental weapon you are about to wield is sovereign indifference. The moment someone tries to drag you into the court of explanations, you don't defend yourself. You don't attack, you simply remain. Silence is not the absence of a response, it is the most violent response there is. It communicates, without expending a drop of saliva, that the other person's opinion doesn't carry enough weight to alter your state of repose. Imagine the contrast. While the average person stammers and piles up arguments, you hold eye contact. 2 seconds of silence after a probing question are enough to invert the hierarchy. 3 seconds make the other person feel like an intruder. 5 seconds make the other person start explaining themselves to you. Power doesn't belong to the one who asks, but to the one who holds the answer and chooses not to give it away. This is your first victory. You have ceased to be the fleeing prey and have become the observing mountain. By not explaining yourself, you retain all your vital energy. You do not create cracks in your armor. The other, confused by the lack of reaction, begins to project onto you a force that he does not understand. He thinks, if he doesn't justify himself, it's because he knows something I don't. If he doesn't defend himself, it's because he is untouchable. The explanation is a hemorrhage of authority. Silence is the cauterization of the wound. By adopting this posture, you discover that control of the situation belongs to those who care the least. In the social theater, those who try hardest to convince are those who possess the least conviction. The man who knows his worth does not advertise himself. He is a fact of nature, but beware, this is only the surface of your new skin. Now that you've recovered your weapon, you need to see how the world around you begins to bend to your new frequency. The effect on people will be immediate, and perhaps for the first time you will feel what true magnetism is. When you stop explaining yourself, the fabric of reality around you begins to tear and recompose itself in a different way. You will notice a disturbing and at the same time intoxicating phenomenon. People will begin to gravitate towards your mystery. The very moment you deny the world the satisfaction of understanding your motives, you create a vacuum of authority, and human nature abhors a vacuum. Others, accustomed to the mediocrity of those who justify everything, will become disoriented. Those who previously interrupted you will now wait for you to stop speaking. Those who judged you easily will now hesitate, for they do not know where your confidence ends and where your strategy begins. The social effect is brutal. Whoever doesn't explain themselves dominates the tension. In a negotiation, a romantic conflict, or a group dynamic, the person who remains silent after a provocation dictates the pace of the game. By not offering arguments, you don't offer points of attack. You become a smooth marble wall where the darts of others' criticism cannot stick. The other person expends their arsenal trying to hurt you, while you remain intact, conserving ammunition. More than respect, you begin to generate a kind of dark magnetism. People are drawn to what they cannot decipher. The self-explanatory man is a mapped territory, uninteresting. The silent man is an unknown land, full of dangers and hidden treasures. You become the screen where others project their own fears and desires for grandeur. They begin to treat you with reverential caution, fearing that any wrong word will reveal their own inferiority in the face of your glacial calm. But pay attention, this change in external perception is merely a reflection. True power lies not in what they think of you, but in your need for them to disappear. The manipulation you now exert is not active, it's passive. You control others by allowing them to get lost in their own noise while seeking your approval. And that brings us to the most dangerous part. If you think the challenge is just keeping quiet in front of others, you haven't yet faced the real enemy that lives inside your own chest. Now descend with me into the basement of your psyche. Why, even knowing all this, does the urge to speak up still throb inside you like an open wound? The answer is bitter. You don't explain yourself to inform others. You explain yourself to convince yourself that you are still good. The deepest layer of this weakness is the lack of an ego hungry for approval. You are addicted to external validation. When you justify yourself, what you're really doing is begging permission not to feel guilty. You fear the judgment of others because deep down you don't trust your own judgment. If the world points the finger, you crumble, unless you can build a castle of words to hide behind. This is where the issue reveals its true face. The need for explanation is a symptom of identity failure. You are a tenant in the minds of others, paying rent with your dignity. Every time you try to correct someone's view of you, you are saying, your perception of me is more real than my own reality. This is a form of spiritual enslavement. You have given the world the power to define who you are. Neediness is the poison that runs in the veins of the common man. He cannot bear to be hated. He cannot bear to be misunderstood. He prefers to be an understood slave than an isolated king. But sovereignty demands isolation. The price of power is the willingness to be the villain in the story of small minds. If you cannot bear the weight of being disliked without trying to defend yourself, you will never be free. You will remain merely a puppet whose strings are pulled by anyone who shows disapproval. True transformation isn't about what you say, but about who you kill within yourself. You need to kill the good boy that lives inside you, the one who wants everyone to understand that he had good intentions. Intentions don't matter, results matter. Your silence is the tomb where you will bury your need to be loved by those who don't matter. And this is where the game ceases to be external and becomes internal. Get ready, because we are reaching the breaking point where technique dies to give way to nature. We've reached the point where technique becomes blood. Up until now, you may have viewed silence as a trick, a mask you put on to appear stronger. But masks fall under pressure. What I demand of you now is an identity metamorphosis. You need to understand that you're not just stopping explaining yourself. You're ceasing to be the person who needs an alibi to exist. The rupture happens when you accept, definitively and coldly, that the understanding of others is irrelevant. The man you were died the moment you realize that your truth doesn't need witnesses to be real. At the point of no return, you no longer feel the burn in your throat when you are misunderstood. You look at the judgment of others like a king looks at the rain. It's just an external event that doesn't alter the structure of the throne. This is the paradigm shift. The world is no longer your judge. It is your laboratory. When someone confronts you with an accusation or a pointed question, your silence is no longer a defense. It's a declaration of independence. You are not hiding your version of the facts. You have simply decided that the other person does not have the necessary level of access to receive it. You now operate at a frequency of psychological superiority, while others are trapped in drama, reactivity, and the childish need to be right. You inhabit the plane of cause. You are the cause. The world is the effect. The sense of power emanating from the shift is addictive. You stop feeling exposed and begin to feel untouchable. Your old self sought refuge in words. Your new self finds safety in the abyss between what you know and what the world sees. You are no longer a defendant trying to prove your innocence. You are the law itself, and the law doesn't justify itself, it imposes itself. If others don't understand your motives, the problem lies with their intellectual or intuitive capacity, not with your communication. From now on, your silence is your boundary. Whoever wants to cross it will have to pay with respect, not with questions. But this is more than just a social stance. It takes us to the pinnacle of our journey, where this practice transforms into an absolute worldview. Now breathe the thin air of the peaks, where few manage to survive. What began as a strategy for social isolation and an exercise in silence has now become your philosophy of existence. You need to understand that the universe offers no explanations for its tragedies, nor does the sun justify its burning. Nature operates by decree, not by dialogue. Adopting the stance of never explaining oneself is to align oneself with the brute force of reality. Schopenhauer said that what a man is matters much more than what a man has or what a man represents in the eyes of others. By renouncing justification, you are declaring that your essence is self-sufficient. You are not a satellite orbiting the approval of others. You are a sun, burning with your own light, indifferent to the debris that orbits around you. At this altitude, silence becomes a form of superior aesthetics. There is a cruel elegance in letting others draw their own conclusions, however wrong they may be. Allowing oneself to be misinterpreted is the ultimate test of detachment from the ego. It is proof that you are no longer a slave to the image that others project on the cave wall. You now inhabit the light of your own will. Understand the world as a game of shadows. Those who explain themselves try to illuminate their own shadow so that others will not fear it. The sovereign, however, walks with his shadow beside him, accepting it as part of his greatness. He knows that his truth is a private temple, and inviting any curious person to enter through explanations is to profane what is most sacred within himself. From today onward, your life is a monologue of power, where the world is merely an occasional spectator. You owe nothing to anyone. Not clarity, not context, not coherence. The only coherence that matters is fidelity to your own objectives, but the journey is drawing to a close. The man who started this video is not the same one who finishes it. You walked through the fire, killed the defendant, and sat on the throne. Now only the final rite remains to seal this new identity. You have reached the end, but in truth you have just crossed the threshold into an existence where most will never dare to tread. The man who begged to be understood is left behind, buried under the weight of useless words that never served to protect him. What remains now is a structure of steel and ice, an individual who needs no one's permission to be who he is. From this moment on, your silence is your mark of nobility. When you leave this video and return to the real world, people will try to pull you back into the old game. They will ask tricky questions, cast disapproving glances, and test your newfound boundaries. They want you to go back to being predictable, small, and vulnerable. They want you to explain yourself. Don't give them that pleasure. Feel the power that emanates from an unanswered question. Feel the superiority of observing the anxiety of others while you remain silent, unperturbed, sovereign. You're no longer a member of the masses. You are part of a rare minority that understands that power is not debated. Power is exercised. Your silence is proof that you are the absolute master of your destiny. If they don't understand, let them remain in the dark. If they judge you, let them tire themselves out. Your inner clarity is all that matters. You now bear the mark of the ruthless. You are the architect of your perception, the strategist of your shadow, and the king of your own silence. If you felt the weight of these words and are ready to inhabit this new identity, leave your mark in the comments. Write only, "Silence is my throne." Nothing more. Don't explain why. Don't justify your presence. Just mark your territory. And if you seek to become a master of human nature and mental strategy, join this tribe of awakened minds. Sign up, but do it for yourself, for your sovereignty and not for me. The game has begun. And this time, you're not the one dealing the cards. You own the table.